Okay, good evening. We are going to begin Amud Yomi, Daf Yud Ches. We are on Yud Ches Amud Aleph 18a. We are about halfway down the page by Gufa. Okay, so this is a new parak. This parak discusses, at least at the beginning, it discusses the halachos of Shmira. It discusses the halachos of Aninos. It began with Aninos. I'm going to move on today to the halachos of Shmira, of one who guards the mace. We're going to talk about a number of different nuances with regard to that. I don't know how far we'll get tonight, but the end of today's Amud, which flips over to tomorrow's Amud, is actually discusses what do deceased people know about the world that we live in today. So we're going to go through a number of different stories that have taken place to try to identify what it is that a deceased person might know. Are they aware of what goes on in this world? Are they not aware of what goes on in this world? And we will hopefully see how far we can get tonight. So the Gemara says, Gufa, 2 lines before it starts to get wide. Hamashamer sameis, the person who's guarding a mace, afal pi she'eno meso, even though the deceased person is not one of his relatives, he's just standing there as a shomer to guard the mace. Halach is pater mikriyas shema, u'minat tefillah. This person is pater from reading kriyas shema, which is mitzvah asay, u'minat tefillah, which is mitzvah midrabanan, u'minat tefillin, from mitzvah tefillin, mikol mitzvahs hamuras b'Torah, and all mitzvahs. And the Gemara previously discussed what's the addition of all mitzvahs in the Torah. But the Gemara goes on. Hayu shnayim. If there are 2 people, so 2 people were partnering to guard this mace, zeh mishamer v'zeh koreh. They could take turns. You don't need to have 2 people guarding the mace the whole time. So they could switch off, they could alternate. Zeh mishamer, this one's going to guard the mace. V'zeh koreh, this one will read kriyas shema. Ben Azai Omer, Ben Azai says, hayu boyim b'sfina. What if they are guarding a mace, a deceased person, on a ship? So he says, amanicho bezavius zu umispalin, and they could go daven. So in other words, he says, even if there are 2 people, they could just place the mace, place the deceased person in the corner, then they can go off on their own and to be mispal. Sorry, mispalin shneim bezavis acheres. The 2 of them could daven at the same time in another corner. The Gemara says, my benai, what's the difference? Why is it that when a person is on a ship, we have this opinion from Ben Azai where he says that they could just leave the mace by itself without any shmira? The Gemara says, Amar Avina Chosheshin Lachbarin Ika Benayu. There's a machlokes clearly between Ben Azai and the other opinion. Are we worried about achbarin? Mar Sarah Chashinan, Umar Sarah Lo Chashinan. The previous shita was of the opinion that we are worried about achbarin, about mice coming to attack the mace, even on a ship. And Ben Azai says, no, we're not worried about mice coming to desecrate the mace on the ship. Why? Because it's a ship. How would the mouse get there? The mouse can't just swim all the way to the ship, so therefore there are not going to be any mice there. This really gets into a whole discussion. I mean, what are they arguing about? Are they arguing whether there's mice on the ship? I mean, what type of machlokes is that? Check. There's a way to find out. If there are, in other words, we never want to have a machlokes between Amoraim, which is going to descend into a machlokes in Mitzias. Because Mitzias is something we can find out. You don't need to have Amoraim arguing about what's in front of us. So, again, I didn't have enough time to really look into this, but my understanding is that when we're talking about the sugi over here, are we also worried about achbarim? In other words, everybody agrees that there's a reason to guard a mace, whether or not we're guarding it from a mouse coming to attack it. But maybe there's also an additional reason not to leave the mace by itself. Maybe even if there's no relevant or prevalent physical threat to the mace, still it's not appropriate to leave a mace by itself. And therefore, it seems like Ben Azai says, no, what we're worried about is achbarim. There's no achbarim, there's no mice on a ship, there's no reason for the shmir. And the chachamim say, even though there's no mice, in other words, we're not going to argue with you about whether there's mice on a ship, but even though there are no mice, still there are other reasons why it's important to guard the deceased body from the mice. The Gemara goes on. A person who is carrying atzamos. I mean, the person is traveling with a deceased body. Hareza lo yitneim bedafskia v'yitneim al gabe chamar v'yirkav aleim. Don't load the body into this leather suitcase, I guess. Put it on the back of a donkey and then just sit on top of the suitcase. That's not the way to travel. You should not sit on top of the suitcase while you're traveling. Why? It's disgraceful. You don't treat a dead body that way. Don't sit on top of it. So rather, you can find another place to sit. The Gemara says, what if he's traveling and all of a sudden he sees there are these pirates who are coming or some type of threat on the road, and he has to quickly just get moving quickly. The halacha is, umipnei listim, or because of thieves, then it's mutter for him to sit on top of that suitcase and just take off and get out of there as quickly as possible. Now the Gemara says, similar to what we said with regard to atzamos, to the bones of a dead body, the same halacha applies to a sefer Torah. Now the Gemara says, which halacha are you talking about? Ahai. Upon which halacha are you drawing this parallel between a dead body and a sefer Torah? Ilei marisha, if you're telling me that the parallel is drawn, that just like you should not just take a dead body and put it into a suitcase and put it on top of a donkey and sit on top of it, similarly, you shouldn't do the same thing with the Sefer Torah. Gemara says, Pshita, that's obvious. Mi gara, Sefer Torah mi'atzamos. Everybody knows you have to treat a Sefer Torah with respect. Why would it be any worse? Again, you have to treat a dead body with respect. You also have to treat a Sefer Torah with respect. Why would I think it's any worse? The Gemara says, Al Seifa, it's going in the second part, which is a big chiddush. That if you're carrying a Sefer Torah from one place to the next, and then you find yourself facing some type of threat, you could sit right on top of that suitcase that's holding the Sefer Torah, get on that donkey, and get out of there as quickly as possible, even though, generally speaking, it's not appropriate to sit on top of the Sefer Torah and to ride the donkey. The Gemara goes on. Amar Rechava. Rechava said, Amar Yehuda, the name of Yehuda, Kol HaRoeh HaMeis V'Eino Melavehu, Over Mishum Loig L'Rosh Charav Osehu. This pasuk came up earlier about Loig L'Rosh. Loig L'Rosh is when a person pretty much laughs or treats a poor person in a disgraceful way. A person makes a mockery out of a person who's at a disadvantage. So now this is talking about a case where there is a levaya, and the assumption is that the levaya is well attended. So it's not like the levaya needs him or his assistance to carry the mace. We're not talking about a mace mitzvah over here. We're talking about a case where a person happens to find himself in a place where there is a mace, there's an aron which is passing by. The halacha is, a person should take a few steps to be malavat to escort the mace. If a person does that, he's over on loig l'rosh cheraf oseo. Now the Gemara says, v'im helveyu, if he does indeed escort the mace, mascharo, what is the reward? Omer of Asri, Asri says, Alavakas of Omer, upon him the pasuk says, Malve Hashem chonein dal, umechabdo chonein evyon. So the actual way to read the pasuk, if I'm not mistaken, is the way I read it as malve. Malve is talking about a person who gives a loan to a dal, to a poor person. But the way Rashi explains over here is, it's a little bit like a play on words. Instead of reading it malve as one who lends money, milave, a person who escorts. It's the same. It's spelled the same way, just the pronunciation is different. So milave, if a person is going to escort, Hashem chonein dal, and then in mechabdo chonein evyon, Hashem will ultimately give respect to this person as well. The Gemara goes on. Rechia Rabbi Yonasan have shakli va'azli bebeis hakvaros. Rechia and Rabbi Yonasan we're taking a walk in a cemetery. Have kashadya techilta Rabbi Yonasan. The techelas, the tzitzis of Rabbi Yonasan was dragging on the floor. Amarle Rechia Dalia. Rechia said to him, lift up your tzitzis, pick it up. Why? Kadesh lo yomru. It's like this. The people who are buried here in the cemetery will not say Lamachar ba'netzleinu. Lamachar doesn't necessarily mean tomorrow, but in the future, maybe even in the maybe distant future, not such distant future, but eventually these people are going to join us. They'll also be placed in the cemetery. Va'achshav mecharf mosanu. Here they're walking around, all excited about themselves. They have their tzitzits, it's dragging on the floor. They don't realize that one day they'll be here as well. In other words, he was making the point that it's inappropriate for a person to allow their tzitzis to show in the Beis HaKvaros. In other words, and then Amar Lei, he said, if that's the case, that's the reason why you're telling me that I have to pick up my tzitzis. Umi yadi kuli hai. Do these mason who are buried over here know what's going on? V'ksiv, the pasuk tells us, v'hamesim einam yodim me'uma. Dead people don't know anything. In other words, a dead person is dead. Therefore, they don't know anything. So why are you worried that the people who are buried over here are going to feel badly about the fact that I'm wearing tzitzis, I still have the opportunity to become a mitzvah, and they don't know what I'm wearing. They can't see what's going on over here because the pasuk says clearly, dead people don't know anything. Amar Lei, he said to him, Imkaris lo shanis. if you learned this pasuk once, you must not have reviewed it. Imshanes, and if you did learn it a second time, lo shilasht, you didn't do it a third time. Im shilash, if you did it a third time, lo pirshu lecha. You didn't do it a fourth time, which will ultimately give the a better understanding. Why? In other words, what the pasuk means, and he explains the pasuk from more of a broader or a greater context. Ki achayim yodim sheyamusu. When the pasuk says, it's the same place where the pasuk says this. Ki achayim yodim sheyamusu. The Chaim, those who are alive, Yodim Shayamusu, they know that they're going to die, and therefore, because they know that they're eventually going to die, they plan their lives in a way to make sure that they're prepared for such a day. And therefore, they spend their life accumulating mitzvos, zechuyos, merits to take with them as they go to Olam Haba. The Gemara says, Elu tzadikim. Even these are called tzaddikim. This pasuk is referring to tzaddikim. Why? Shebemisasan nikra'u chayim. Tzaddikim, even when they are already dead, they're considered. They are referred to as chayim. Shneimar, for it says in the pasuk, ubenayu ben yoyada ben ishchai. Benayu ben yoyada ben ishchai. It's referring to him. Rav Pa'alim. He did a lot of things. Mikaptzael. He's from Kaptzael. Hu hika es shnei Aryeh. He struck in the years of Aryeh, which refers to the base of Mikdash. Moav, v'hu yarad. He went down. V'hika es Aryeh beso chabar. He struck the lion inside the pit. B'yom hashaleg, on a snowy day. That's what the pasuk says. Now the Gemara is going to ultimately try to understand what's going on in all these psukim. Ben Ishchai. The pasuk says he was benayu ben yoyada. He was ben Ishchai. The Gemara says, Atu kuli alma b'nei mesininu. What does it mean? What does it mean when we say Benayo was a ben Ishchai, the son of a live person? Everybody is the son of a live person. How can anybody not be the son of a live person? Everyone else is the son of a dead person? Ella ben Ishchai, what that means is, Shafilu b'misaso karoi chai. Even in his death, he was considered chai. Rav Pa'alim, the pasuk says he was Rav Pa'alim mikaptzoel. What does that mean? Sheriba v'kavatz po'alim l'Torah. He did a lot of things to enhance Torah learning. V'huhika es shnei Aryeh Moav. What does that mean when the pasuk says that? Shlo hiniach kamoso lo b'mikdash rishon v'lo b'mikdash sheni. It was nobody who was like him, not in the first base of Mikdash, not in the second base of Mikdash. V'hu yard v'ika so Aryeh so chabar. What does the pasuk mean when it says that he went down and struck a lion inside the bar? It says biyom hashaleg ikad amri. So there's two different understandings of what this pasuk means. Ikad amri. Some say the tavar gezizi de bar de v'nachas v'taval. Some understand that it means that he actually took a hammer and he broke through a layer of ice. In the winter, it's like this, he can be tovel. He wanted to make sure that he was tar. Ikad amri. There are those who say the tana sifra de beirav biyoma desisva, that he's learned the sifra of Rav in the winter. In other words, either one of these things is very difficult. I don't know if this is the pshat. This is just what I thought of when I was learning this. That in the first pshat we understand. A lot of mysterious nafesh for a person to go to the mikveh when it's freezing cold outside. They have to break the ice to get into the water. We can understand. I think actually one of these days we're having the Maryland State Police polar bear plunge or something like that. So, all right, at least people are prepared. There's tents with heaters all over the place and hot chocolate. And everybody's able to go have their plunge very, very quickly. But a person who has to go out in the middle of the winter, it's freezing cold, to be tovel, break the ice, it's a very big mysterious nefesh. The other one is that he learned this sefer in one day in the winter. I think perhaps, what's the relevance of the winter? I think it is because the Gemara says it's biyoma desisva. In the daytime of the winter. During the day of the winter, it's much shorter. So in other words, it is a very big compliment to say a person was able to accomplish so much in a shorter period of time. In the summer, he has so many more hours to get it done. In the winter, it's 4:30. The sun goes down already, it's no longer Yoma. Maybe that's the pshat, maybe not. All right, the Gemara goes on. V'amesim einam yodim uma. And the pasuk follows that pasuk and says, that we brought this all in because we're trying to understand the lead up to this pasuk. The next pasuk says, "Hamesim inim yodim uma." That refers to elu rishayim. That refers to evil people. wicked people. Shebechayayim kuruyim mesim. During their lifetime, they are called mesim. Shneimar, for it says, Beschalal Rasha Nasi Yisrael. V'iba Esema, Mihacha Pishnayim Edim, or Pishlosh Edim, Yumas Hames. So we see that the pasuk over here refers to the person who's dying as a mace. He's not dead yet. The mace will die. Right now he's still alive. Why are we calling him a mace? Chayu, he's alive. Ella Hames Meikar referred to this person as a mace while he's still alive. So we see clearly that this Gemara understands that when the pasuk says "V'amesim einam yodim me'uma," it doesn't mean that a dead person doesn't know anything. The mesim is like a euphemism to describe a person whose life has zero vitality in it. A person whose life has zero vitality in it. A person is completely wasting their life. That's a rasha. A rasha is a person whose entire life goes to waste. So much so to the point where in this case he has to actually be put to death because he's abusing his life. So a person whose life is used to cause pain, suffering to other people, that person's a rasha. That person is considered to be a mace even while they're alive. Such a person is einam yodim uma, doesn't know anything. But generally speaking, a person who passes away, we don't have any raya yet as to whether or not these people know what's going on in the world that comes. So tomorrow's Gemara is going to bring up a number of stories. We have a couple more minutes. Maybe we'll just get started on it. We're not going to finish it because the story goes pretty much down the page. We'll get started in Richter Hashem tomorrow night. I think I'm still here tomorrow night. Tomorrow night we'll continue this Gemara. Gemara says, B'nei Reb Chia nafik likiryasa. The sons of Reb Chia went out to check out their affairs. They went to go do business with some real estate that they owned. Now, while they were there, for whatever reason, ayakluhu talmidayo, they forgot their learning. Maybe they got distracted too long. They forgot their learning. Have become a tsari lat kure. They couldn't. They were having a very difficult time remembering the things that they learned. Amar lechad lechavri. One of them said to his friend, Yoda avon b'hai tzara. Does our father of Chia know how difficult it is for us that we forgot our learning? In other words, they were curious. Does our father know how painful it is for us to be living such a lifestyle where we don't know, we forgot our Torah, we forgot what's going on? Amar le'idach mina yada. The other one said, from where should we know this? From Vaksiv, it says, Yichabdu banav v'lo yada. How would he know? How would our father know what our suffering is like? The pasuk in Eov talks about the fact that a person's sons will ultimately become very honorable. V'lo yada, the father won't know anything of it. So it seems clear that a person does not know what's going on after they pass away. Amar le'idach, the other one responded and said, V'lo yada, is it true that he doesn't know? Vaksiv, but it does say, Ach bisaro alav yichav, v'nafsho alav tochal, which describes a pain that's happening with a person's flesh after they die. V'amar Yitzchak explains, Kasha rima lameis, the worms that attack the corpse of a person are more painful than kimachat bebasar achai, like a needle going into a live person's skin. So it's very painful for a mace. It's very painful to have to experience the worms that are attacking their body. And he answered, he said, Amri betzara didhu yadi. Their own pain, we can understand that they can know that. Betzara da achrina lo yadi. When it comes to the pain of someone else, perhaps they don't know. The Gemara is going to go on, and the Gemara is going to challenge this and say velo. And tomorrow night, Mr. Hashem will learn a fascinating story about a person who got into a fight with his wife, found himself spending the evening in the cemetery that night, and overheard a conversation that took place between two deceased people who were buried there. Very exciting, Mr. Hashem. Tomorrow we'll learn that. Sleep well tonight.
Amazing, the two guys who forgot.